in the stories we tell. If you liked the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. The White Moonlight Alina Sterling, whom Crown Prince Alexander had secretly admired for 10 years, had finally returned to the capital. She stood before me, arrogant as she spoke. "You get lost." I gently lifted the hem of my gown, stepped into the carriage, turned back and smiled at her. "My apologies, but this place is no longer yours to return to." Let me explain. I competed for the position of Crown Princess, carefully cultivated by the Hartley Marquis' estate for 10 years. Alexander's attachment to me has reached the point where he must marry me or no one. Even His Majesty the Emperor himself cannot change this. In terms of family background, appearance, and accomplishments, I ranked first among all the noble ladies. The final palace selection included only His Majesty, Her Majesty the Empress, and Alexander. His Majesty asked me, "If you were required to give up everything the Marquis' estate has provided, solely for Alexander, would you be willing?" I answered, "This humble lady is willing." With that response, Marquis Hartley was extremely satisfied. The Hartley family controlled military power, forcing even His Majesty to tread carefully. He gazed at my face and laughed heartily. "Excellent, truly excellent. Heaven has taken pity on me and bestowed you upon me." I was an orphan rescued by Marquis Hartley from among the disaster refugees. He buried my parents and brother, took me in as his adopted daughter, and announced to the outside world that I was the legitimate daughter of the Marchioness, born with a weak constitution, and sent to the countryside to recuperate. I knelt prostrate on the ground. "This daughter must thank Father for granting her a new life," he said. "Good. 10 years of planning have all been for this very day." At the spring banquet that year, Alexander met me for the first time. His gaze lingered on me for quite some time before he slowly spoke. "Do you know the legitimate daughter of Baron Sterling's estate, Alina?" I shook my head, my eyes filled with confusion. "You two bear a striking resemblance, except she has a beauty mark between her eyebrows, like a lotus blossom, making her even more captivating." I lowered my head slightly and answered in a shy voice, "This humble lady only recently returned to the capital. Why did that young lady not attend today?" Alexander shook his head, revealing a look of loss in his eyes. "She avoids me, refuses to meet." I smiled and said, "Young master, with your appearance that even ladies cannot compare to, how could anyone not wish to see such a face? Truly they know not their fortune." From that day forward, Alexander remembered me. Vivian Hartley, legitimate daughter of the Hartley Marquis' estate, bearing a face remarkably similar to Elena. From the very first day I stepped into the Hartley estate, I understood clearly that I was chosen solely because my appearance resembled Alina, the precious daughter of Baron Sterling, the one Alexander had watched over and cared for tenderly since childhood. Marquis Hartley never concealed his purpose in saving me, and I never hid the fact that I had long seen through his ambitions. One called the other father, one called the other daughter, but it was merely a performance staged for the world to see. He provided me with warmth and comfort. I helped him achieve his grand design. Marquis Hartley bribed those around her, secretly adding medicine to Elena's daily tonic, causing her severe digestive distress for several days, forcing her to miss the spring banquet. The infatuated prince assumed his beauty was avoiding him. Any noble lady must guard her reputation carefully. Getting close to the crown prince, by tomorrow rumors would spread throughout the capital, and if not handled properly, could implicate the entire clan. I simply didn't know the identity of the man before me, merely thinking he was some young noble lord. "This chicken and chestnut soup was made by the imperial chef in the palace, please try it." Alexander attentively served me a piece of chicken and some chestnuts. I smiled gracefully. "Thank you for your kindness, young master, but I actually prefer chicken soup without chestnuts." Alexander paused briefly, then tried serving me a shrimp from the braised shrimp dish. "This dish is rich but not greasy." I did not refuse. I gently finished eating one before speaking. "The flavor is quite good, though I still feel that steaming fresh shrimp better preserves its natural sweetness." At that moment, the surprise and delight in Alexander's eyes could not be concealed. Even her tastes were identical to hers. Of course they were identical. I knew Elena's habits and preferences better than I knew my own, because that information cost the Marquis' estate no small amount of to obtain. I feigned delight. Then this truly must be fate with that young lady. When it comes to acting, even I must admire myself. Every single day I was performing, How could I not become supremely skilled? After the spring banquet, throughout the capital spread word that the legitimate daughter of the Hartley Marquis estate bore an 80% resemblance to Alina, and had been treated with such warm attention by the crown prince, conversing intimately with him, perfectly matched in temperament. Everyone mocked me as Alina's substitute, obediently following her lead. For this I was punished with confinement, simply for causing the Marquis' estate to lose face. Alexander, feeling guilty, had someone secretly deliver to me a pair of magnolia jade earrings. At the birthday celebration of the old matriarch of the Duke's estate, all the noble young ladies showed off their gold, jade, and precious jewels. Only I wore a simple pair of jade earrings. That was also the first time I came face to face with Elena. Her eyes were cold enough to pierce bone. These were a gift from the crown prince to you, weren't they? Magnolia flowers are my greatest love. He had someone specially craft a pair, but unfortunately I didn't care for them. She spoke these words in a light tone, yet loud enough for everyone around to hear clearly, then left without even bothering to glance at me again. From that point forward, my identity as a substitute was essentially confirmed. The noble young ladies of the capital mocked me every time they gathered for tea and conversation. Dongxi imitating Cixi, delusional in her foolish infatuation. One day I sat in the courtyard with Marquis Hartley drinking tea, quietly listening to the steward report on how widely the rumors had spread. Marquis Hartley set down his teacup and instructed to release more deer into the forest. The hunting gathering was approaching. Every year during the beginning of summer, the military officials of the court would bring their families to the hunting grounds for the gathering. While other young ladies sat in pavilions drinking tea and admiring scenery, I rode horses and drew my bow alongside the young noble lords, chasing rabbits and hunting deer. That person preferred quiet, normally only focused on reading and painting. Alexander rode his horse, leisurely remarking. I laughed. This common girl grew up in the countryside, accustomed to open skies and wide lands, unlike those noble young ladies of distinguished status. Alexander's expression shifted slightly. A few idle rumors are not worth your concern. I didn't respond, merely tightened the reins, drew back my bowstring taut, and released an arrow straight through the heart, striking the deer ahead directly. That day, Alexander watched my retreating figure for a long while. The second time I encountered Alina was at a poetry competition hosted by Lady Margaret, the Empress's elder sister. This was the first poetry gathering I attended, and I broke Elena's long, standing undefeated record, claiming first place. Lady Margaret praised me. In literature you can compose poetry and paint, in martial arts you can ride horses and hunt, truly an outstanding lady among the inner chambers. But she continued with a smile, though today's attire is rather plain, not quite befitting the legitimate daughter of a marquis' estate. I smiled in response. No adornment is more precious than imperial grace. The crown prince, out of compassion for this young lady's childhood frailty and weak constitution, bestowed these magnolia jade earrings as a blessing. Naturally, this young lady treasures them as precious jewels, and the elegant purity of magnolia blossoms perfectly suits simple dress. Lady Margaret had heard the story of those earrings and smiled. Excellent. Elegant and pure. Very fitting for you. Someone fetch my flower hairpin. The lady had me step closer and personally place the pin in my hair. The pin was crafted from gentle white jade, paired with translucent green jade, adorned with amethyst-like wisps of ethereal blue smoke, set upon golden leaves that elevated its noble bearing. This was bestowed upon me by the Empress Dowager, the only one of its kind in the world. Today I see it matches those earrings perfectly, so I gift it to you. As the poetry gathering ended, passing by Elena, I lowered my voice to say, magnolias are not only noble and pure, they also bring blessings. In this world there are people like this. Rather than swiftly capturing their prey, they prefer watching their quarry step by step into the trap. Elena was precisely this type of person. Though she always considered herself above others, she was not entirely unmoved by the position of crown princess. But she loved even more the admiring gazes of society, loved becoming the subject of gossip that left Alexander endlessly infatuated. Alexander's devoted affection moved hearts. In summer he had people deliver ice from the palace, in winter he gifted warming braziers tribute from the north. She accepted all these gifts, but always maintained a careful distance from Alexander, as if guarding against scandal. Had I not appeared, Alexander would likely have treasured what he could not obtain even more, willing to remain the devoted admirer forever. But I had arrived, and I resembled her even more than she resembled herself. An Alina who knew to hide schemes beneath gentle compliance, who knew to conceal ambition beneath graceful propriety. I knew how to please those who stood near the center of imperial power, such as Lady Margaret. Society might mock me, but as long as the lady felt I knew to bow before authority, was gentle and obedient to Alexander, took favor as honor, that was sufficient. Alina's greatest foolishness lay here. She could capture Alexander's very soul, but she offended others within the imperial family. From the day Lady Margaret stood behind me, no one dared gossip carelessly about me anymore. And I became an honored guest that noble families competed to invite to their banquets throughout the capital. Whether playing ball, throwing arrows at pots, poetry competitions, or flower arranging, I handled everything skillfully without a single breach of etiquette. Day after day passed. What remained unchanged were the two gifts of imperial grace I kept with me, the magnolia jade earrings and the priceless, one-of-a-kind flower hairpin. From summer into early autumn, that day was when the female relatives of meritorious officials and nobility entered the palace to pay respects to the Empress. The Empress looked at me with a smile. Vivian truly is a pure child, though you should also wear more elaborate attire to befit your status as legitimate daughter of a marquis' estate. I bowed and gently replied, "Father often teaches this humble lady that material wealth is external, excessive greed brings harm. Rather than value, one should understand what is appropriate. Everything the marquis' estate possesses comes from the grace of your majesty. Even cherishing these gifts, my bounds." The Empress nodded with satisfaction. Truly, as my elder sister said, very sensible. Upon leaving the palace, the Empress bestowed a carriage full of jewelry and clothing, and had the attendant beside her convey. "Young lady, in the bloom of youth, you should also adorn yourself to appear more radiant." Elena was naturally also present, but according to family rank, my seat was above hers, and the Empress had limited energy. With a face like mine, she rarely wished to look at a second person. In late autumn, Lady Margaret hosted a banquet, inviting the nobility to admire chrysanthemums, taste crab and compose poetry. This time Alexander also personally attended. At the previous poetry competition I had overshadowed her. This time Elena changed tactics, not composing poetry but painting instead. Her chrysanthemum painting was both elegant and refined. Alexander did not spare his praise. Miss Sterling's painting would be difficult for even the greatest master painters in the realm to match. Elena modestly expressed thanks, while arrogantly glancing at me, her eyes seeming to say, "See." With just a gesture from me, Alexander immediately comes running. Following her gaze, Alexander also turned to look at me. Today I was not wearing the magnolia jade earrings he had gifted, but instead wore jewelry and robes bestowed by the Empress. Alexander's eyes flashed with disappointment. He knew well how much I treasured those earrings. In the end, Alexander could not restrain himself from speaking. "Miss Vivian, I wonder if you know how to paint. I once heard my aunt praise your exceptional talents." I raised my head and smiled slightly. I wouldn't dare. Before Lady Elena, what talent would I dare display to embarrass myself? Elena must have been quite satisfied. When the banquet ended, she held her head high as she stepped into her carriage, nearly missing her step. The autumn weather was clear and refreshing. I went with Marquis Hartley to the suburbs for fishing, catching a basket of fresh, plump fish. The Hartley household had someone deliver a basket to the Crown Prince's estate, along with a calligraphy scroll Alexander had been searching for these past several days. The next day, the Crown Prince sent someone to return the items. It turned out the steward had carelessly taken the wrong item, not the calligraphy scroll but a painting titled, "Autumn Harvest Day," depicting the autumn harvest season. The steward knelt on the ground, trembling as he reported, "The Marquis instructed me to bring the calligraphy from the study." This humble servant's eyes were poor. I took the wrong item. Alexander was not angry, but smiled saying, "No matter. I came today precisely to inquire about that painting. The brushwork is truly superb." Marquis Hartley smiled. It was young Lady Vivian. After returning from fishing the other day, she saw the countryside abundant with autumn harvest and painted it. I fear I've made the Crown Prince laugh. Alexander's face filled with delight upon hearing this. The Marquis is too modest. Miss Vivian's brushwork rivals master painters. Today I had the fortune to admire it, truly a feast for the eyes. In the future, if the opportunity arises, I certainly hope to seek her guidance. After viewing the painting, Alexander's thoughts lingered constantly on this matter. Every few days he found excuses about seeking calligraphy, practicing archery, or playing chess to visit the Hartley Marquis estate. However, the autumn weather turned cold with heavy frost, I contracted a chill, and my health was not convenient for receiving guests, so I had yet to meet Alexander even once. But lying ill grew tedious, so I painted several pictures to pass the time: autumn chrysanthemums, maple leaves, returning geese, or a lady gazing at scenery from her window during illness. Marquis Hartley, doting on his daughter, hung the paintings throughout his study, gazing at them daily as if seeing his daughter before him. Each time Alexander visited and saw a painting, he praised it, and the more he praised, the more he longed to meet the person herself. I knew the time was ripe. Marquis Hartley then made arrangements, inviting the capital's nobility to attend a birthday celebration for the Marchioness at the beginning of the month. At the birthday banquet, besides the first-class tables, the Marquis' estate also arranged numerous entertainments and valuable prizes so the guests could fully enjoy themselves. The prize for the painting competition was Autumn Dwelling in the Mountains by Yidan, a work Elena had practiced copying no fewer than several times. Naturally, she was the first to volunteer, and as expected immediately received lavish praise from the guests. Only Alexander did not nod in approval. He studied the painting for quite some time before turning to me to ask, "Miss Vivian, I wonder if you would like to paint today?" I gently raised my hand to cover my mouth and coughed lightly. "My health has not fully recovered. This humble lady dares not sully your Highness's eyes." Elena's expression immediately turned ugly. This was the first time she saw Alexander's gaze hold a trace of disappointment when looking at her. She spoke hesitantly. "Does your Highness the Crown Prince believe my painting is inadequate?" Alexander seemed to suddenly awaken, hurriedly responding, "Miss Sterling's painting is naturally a masterpiece." After the guests departed, I sat with Marquis Hartley in the study admiring paintings. He laughed, saying, "Using one Yidan painting in exchange for her no longer being the first choice in Alexander's heart, well worth it." For the first time, Alexander clearly knew what she liked, yet did not speak up for her. After my health recovered, I happened to encounter Alexander visiting the estate. Just as Marquis Hartley had gone out for military training, I remained in the study to receive him. Alexander spoke up, as if he had buried this question for a long time. "Miss Vivian, with such exceptional painting skill, why have you never revealed it before?" I smiled gently in response. "Previously, I only thought your Highness was some noble young lord. Later, learning your identity, I discovered the deep bond between your Highness and Lady Elena. I am one who knows the times, how would I dare steal her glory?" Hearing the words deep bond, Alexander's expression immediately darkened. I continued speaking. "These words come from my gratitude for your Highness bestowing upon me the magnolia jade earrings before, considering me a kindred spirit, so I dare speak from my heart. I am not without propriety. Though my appearance may be 80% similar to hers, can matters of the heart truly be seized through appearance? Even if I had feelings, I would not dare trespass upon someone else's beloved. I hope your Highness understands." Alexander was intelligent, naturally understanding what I spoke of was not merely a painting. He contemplated briefly before asking, "Miss Vivian, if you encountered two sisters of similar appearance, age, and accomplishments, one proud and distant, one frank and approachable, whom would you choose?" I smiled in reply. "Naturally the latter. This humble lady is not foolish. Why would I bring suffering upon myself?" Alexander laughed heartily. "Neither am I a fool." That day when leaving the estate, Alexander gifted me a white jade bracelet like mutton fat, smiling as he said, "There is only one in the world." In early winter, Lady Margaret received tribute of premium venison, and invited several daughters of noble families to her estate to roast meat, converse, and warm themselves. The lady sat in the pavilion with a brazier, laughing. "When winter arrives the body tires easily. Having you young ladies here so lovely and vibrant, I too feel refreshed." Looking around, the room is full of legitimate daughters of noble families of similar age, most likely for selecting the crown princess. The lady glanced toward Elena, saying with a smile, "Elena's bracelet is quite lustrous, very fitting for your temperament." Elena smiled in response. "The lady has keen eyes. This was a birthday gift that Crown Prince Alexander bestowed upon me." The lady then looked toward me, her tone somewhat teasing. However, Vivian's white jade bracelet like mutton fat is even more rare. I hear it was personally bestowed by the founding emperor upon Lady Dawn years ago, the one the founding emperor called his only confidant. She smiled lightly. It seems Alexander truly values you greatly. Elena's expression suddenly darkened. For her birthday, no matter how many carriages of gifts Alexander sent, they could not compare to this one unique bracelet. After New Year would be when Alexander selected his consort. Elena, who had always been arrogant, could no longer continue pretending. The next day, she arranged to meet me at a tea house. She apologized profusely. It was my fault, making you endure so much gossip, being mocked for imitating me. From now on, we are close sisters. If anyone dares slander you, I will certainly tear their mouth apart. I feigned being moved, choking up. Elder sister, we were fated by heaven to be close. Being intimate with you is my blessing. Elena cried like pear blossoms in rain. In the end it is still my fault toward you. You are the legitimate daughter of a marquis' estate, yet the crown prince uses you as a chess piece to provoke me. How unfair to you. Hearing this, the moved expression on my face transformed to a trace of sorrow. She continued. I know you too have pride. In this world there are many good men. Why must you willingly be someone's shadow? A few days ago on my birthday, Alexander even had people bring several carriages of gifts. At that time I thought your heart must be quite uncomfortable. Seeing me lower my head with tears falling, saying nothing, she sighed again. Dear sister, it is because I care for you that I speak thus. If you trust me, I will petition Alexander on your behalf to return freedom to you, to let Alexander know that you are Vivian, a golden branch and jade leaf, not someone to be manipulated. She sighed and wept, her mouth speaking of concern for me, yet every word was a blade cutting into my dignity. She was certain that with my status and talents, I absolutely could not willingly be a substitute, but she calculated wrong. I was perfectly willing, even eager. Thus my supposedly close elder sister Elena arranged to meet Alexander for poetry and painting, then recounted all my grievances and resentments without omitting a single word. In truth, whatever she said mattered not at all. I even hoped she would speak as wildly as possible. I had someone carefully wrap the jade bracelet and return it to the crown prince's estate, but I kept those magnolia jade earrings. When Marquis Hartley was discussing matters with Alexander, I had someone come invite him back to the estate. Master, the young lady has cried herself into unconsciousness. When Alexander followed the Marquis back to the estate, I had just conveniently awakened. I knelt before Alexander, performing a weak courtesy. Vivian never imagined she would be able to see the crown prince again. Tears brimmed in my eyes, yet my lips still smiled faintly. Alexander hesitated briefly, as if remembering what Elena had said. You never wished to see me again, it was I who intruded. I struggled to hold back tears, softly replying. As long as the crown prince and elder sister can be as they were before, then whether it is the world's only unique bracelet or the world's only crown prince in one's heart, Vivian is willing to obey elder sister's words and return everything. The retreating figure of Alexander suddenly froze. That day Alexander only stood stunned for a moment, but in the end did not turn back and left. I knew that to truly shatter the image of his white moonlight, this much was not yet enough. But no matter, once the crack had formed, complete collapse was only a matter of time. From then on, Alexander no longer came to find me. Conversely, Elena visited frequently. I never drove her away, even appearing intimate, always happily conversing with her endlessly. So when Lady Margaret sent an invitation for me to visit her estate for tea and conversation, Elena naturally came along. Seeing Elena, Lady Margaret's expression was clearly displeased. After she went out to change her attire, the lady sighed. Vivian, do you know the story of the farmer and the snake? Sometimes one cannot treat people too kindly. I smiled gently, but Lady Elena is the person in Alexander's heart. She lacks nothing, has nothing to scheme from me. When Elena returned, the lady merely said indifferently, Vivian's temperament of not competing or contending is very much like Her Majesty the Empress in the past. That year my younger sister also followed the natural course, unexpectedly receiving heaven's compassion and becoming the model of virtue for all under heaven. That one statement was to shatter Elena's rationality. Fate cannot be predicted by anyone. Elena understood this point even better than I did. To her, I was an unforeseen variable. And to eliminate a variable, the only way was to make it disappear. After leaving Lady Margaret's estate for more than 10 days, Alina no longer sought me out. I guessed she was preparing something. Sure enough, she sent someone to invite me. The lake at her villa had frozen over, inviting me to come ice skating. She wore skating shoes, gliding across the ice surface light as dancing, then pulled me to join her. Intimate as if she and I had known each other for 10 years. When we skated near the center of the lake, she pulled me spinning in circles until dizzy, then released her grip. I slid toward the middle of the lake, where the ice layer began to crack and fracture. I knew clearly this was all her arrangement. The cracks on the ice surface were like the doubts in Alexander's heart, gradually widening and about to shatter completely. I pretended to slip and fall, lying face down on the ice, just in time grasping a large chunk of ice, struggling to stabilize myself. Cold penetrated to my very heart, but I understood this was the best opportunity. I was waiting for Alexander to appear. When Elena's cries rang out, Alexander indeed led people rushing over. I gently released my grip, sliding off the ice chunk, falling into the bone-chilling water. Normally I would not resort to such self-harm tactics, as they easily damage the body, but when the opportunity arose, naturally I had to use it to the fullest. When I regained consciousness, I was already at the Hartley Marquis estate. I heard it was Alexander himself who brought me back, and was still waiting in the front hall. I supported myself on the bed to stand, forcing my weak body to perform courtesy. Many thanks to the Crown Prince for saving my life. I had intended to enjoy elder sister's dance performance with you, unexpectedly inviting such trouble. Alexander hurriedly supported me, carrying several parts reproach. You grew up in the south, naturally unaccustomed to this weather. Why did you not decline the invitation? I forced a pale smile, gentle. Recently elder sister has been happy, not like before when she often took offense with your highness. Vivian thought, as long as elder sister is happy, you two will always be well, so I could not bear to disappoint her. I saw clearly anger rising in the depths of Alexander's eyes. She considers her blood sister, but she may not have thought of her. From that day forward, Alexander daily sent people to deliver bird's nest soup and tonics to the estate, while I consistently used serious illness as an excuse, refusing to receive Elena's apologies. After the second day of the new year, the entire capital entered the most festive period of the year. From early morning until deep night, everywhere was filled with the fragrance of wine and the sound of singing, banquets following one after another endlessly. Hearing that Baron Sterling's estate planned to host a banquet on the fourth day, the Marquis' estate immediately arranged a banquet for the third day. Elena was skilled in culinary arts. For this reason I also practiced arduously for a period, though I only mastered 2 specialty dishes, but this was sufficient. This banquet was personally hosted by me. In official households, unmarried daughters usually must maintain propriety, rarely displaying domestic talents, but I had no such fears. Everything was arranged satisfactorily. The roasted lamb was even more delicious than in the finest restaurants, causing all the guests to praise it endlessly. The next day came Baron Sterling's estate's turn to host. Elena also personally entered the kitchen, every dish on the table prepared by her own hand. But in the end she was still one step behind. Thus throughout the capital people whispered. Elena clearly saw Vivian praised and hastily imitated her. But how could she compare? She is the legitimate daughter of a marquis' estate, separated by an entire rank in nobility. See. The wind shifts. After only 1 year, rumors transformed from substitute to original imitated. After the new year, precisely when the selection roster was being confirmed, everyone kept to themselves, not stepping outside their doors. I brought chestnut cakes made by my own hand, entering the palace to pay respects to the Empress. Entering the palace this time, Vivian also somewhat fears people will speculate that I seek to curry favor with your majesty. But Vivian thinks, regardless of what status the future holds, toward your majesty remains respectful devotion. With your majesty present, the rules passed down by ancestors cannot be forgotten, which is why I came to celebrate the new year. After hearing this, the Empress grasped my hand and sighed. The other young ladies are all tense as bowstrings, thinking only of becoming crown princess. Only you understand propriety. I remained conversing with the Empress for quite some time. When the Empress grew slightly tired, she instructed, "Someone summon the Crown Prince, have him escort Vivian back to her estate." Though this was selection for the Crown Prince's consort, The final decision still rested with His Majesty and the Empress. They would choose one person from among the ladies Alexander favored. Sitting in the carriage, I spoke first. Your Highness, Vivian's name is also on the selection roster. Alexander said nothing, merely glanced at me, meaning to continue. I smiled lightly. In the past Your Highness once said elder sister avoided you. Vivian thought, if I already resemble elder sister by 80%, then perhaps helping Your Highness ease your melancholy could be considered fortune. Therefore, even knowing the magnolia jade earrings were made for elder sister, I still wore them, thinking as long as Your Highness felt comforted, even being viewed as a substitute matters not. Speaking thus, I sighed softly. Now elder sister and Your Highness have resolved your grievances. Vivian naturally need not remain beside you anymore, lest I trouble elder sister's heart. Did she teach you to say those words? Alexander's voice turned cold. I hurriedly knelt. These are Vivian's true intentions. I once thought, if already a substitute, at least I could receive Your Highness's glance once. But now the original has returned, so if I do not consider you a substitute, would you be willing to remain? Alexander extended his hand to help me rise, his gaze profound. My tears seemed already prepared, instantly overflowing. Vivian never dared to harbor such hopes, that there would be such a day. To hope means to have once desired. The selection roster was announced. Both Alina and I had our names in the register. This was within expectations. The preliminary round was directly overseen by Lady Margaret. She understood the temperament and appearance of the ladies in the capital. After the preliminary selection came the audience selection, chosen jointly by Alexander and the Empress. Finally was the palace selection, personally decided by His Majesty. I had long ago investigated this entire process clearly, which is why I deliberately spoke those words. I wanted Alexander to always remember them in his heart. After the preliminary round, the noble ladies retained were to prepare for the audience selection in 3 days. Everything was arranged within the palace. Alina bribed the managing attendant to be arranged in the same room as me. Before her, I leisurely arranged my luggage, taking out a set of pale blue robes. This set was prepared for you by Mother. She said the Empress loves pale blue. The style is also what Lady Margaret often chooses. I hear it is currently very fashionable in the palace. Even the hairpins are the style previously bestowed by the Empress. Alina smiled. Then if you wear this attire, won't you have secured victory? I also smiled gently. Have you forgotten, elder sister? I already said I will not remain beside Alexander. Therefore I think it better to let you wear this instead. In the future when you become crown princess, I too will benefit from association. After the news of Alexander personally escorting me from the palace spread, she began to somewhat believe my words. I continued casually smiling. If you don't trust me, then wait until I wear it through the audience selection, then enter the palace selection together with you. Not too late. Sure enough, Elena immediately spoke up. Dear sister, how could I not understand your intentions? Speaking thus, she accepted the garment, also giving me a different set. Then many thanks for fulfilling my wish. On the day of the audience selection, the noble ladies were divided into many groups led by managing attendants. Elena and I were not in the same group. Before leaving the room, she deliberately watched me don a set of pink robes before leaving reassured. Upon my person was the pale blue robe, almost identical to the one I wore at the spring banquet that year, the very first day meeting Alexander. As for me, only when arriving at the waiting area did I quietly change to the magnolia jade earrings. If Alina had not worn that robe, I could not be 100% certain. But she wore it. She was too impatient, wanting to prove her feelings to Alexander. Perhaps Alexander's affection for me had not yet reached such depth, but the more Alina wanted him to distance himself from me, the more he found it distasteful. Because he was the Eastern Palace crown prince. When had his affairs been anyone else's turn to interfere? As expected, just as I predicted, when Alexander saw Alina wearing that robe, his eyes held not a trace of surprise, only disappointment filling their depths. His white moonlight, the one who had once been proud and aloof, now for the position of crown princess willingly wore someone else's substitute garments. Yet he still allowed her to remain. According to regulations, I wore upon my person brocade robes with gold ornaments, jade and ivory, pearl and jewel. Only the jade earrings seemed somewhat incongruous with the attire. Alexander looked at the earrings I wore, smiling. Spring is when magnolias bloom most beautifully. I too was kept. I willingly wore the earrings that originally belonged to Elena, willing to be the shadow replacing her. Alexander was extremely pleased, but Alina wore my robes, learned my way of treating others, and Alexander grew angry. After the audience selection, only 4 noble ladies remained. Before the palace selection 1 month hence, each was allowed to return home to await the decree. Just arriving back at the estate, the steward came to report. Throughout the capital spread word that Miss Sterling, competing for the position of crown princess, would stop at nothing, even stealing the garments of our young lady, wanting Alexander to mistake her for Vivian. I looked at Marquis Hartley leisurely enjoying his tea, smiled lightly. I fear this is father's grand production. Marquis Hartley laughed heartily. Just spend a bit of silver, that's all. After all, the Sterling family still owes me a great debt of gratitude. Without me that year, how could they have extracted themselves so cleanly? Before the palace selection, Alexander was not permitted to leave the palace. Apart from close personal guards, no one could approach him. Spring weather was warm. I arranged to meet Elena by the lakeside to fly kites. Her expression was extremely ugly, the arrogant bearing of former days appearing clearly once more. I treated you as blood sister. Unexpectedly you schemed and plotted against me. I pretended not to understand. What is elder sister saying? Elena's voice turned cold. Now throughout the capital they mock me, and you are quite pleased with yourself, aren't you? I thought you sincerely gifted me the garments, never imagining I would be made your laughingstock. I smiled lightly. The Empress truly does love pale blue. Were you not also retained? As for who is whose substitute, does that matter? In any case we are supposedly close sisters. Elena sat by the lakeside, face cold as frost, while servants in the distance happily flew kites. That year when you fell into the frozen lake, Alexander arrived so timely. Was it because you sent someone to invite him? I picked up a stone, threw it into the lake. Water splashed up in ripples. Precisely. Otherwise I would have long been buried beneath the frozen ice, exactly as you wished in your heart. No. I stood up, looking down at her from above, my gaze no longer holding any affection. Do you truly believe that between us, having no blood relation, no bonds, we could be true sisters? Elena's expression froze, for a long while unable to speak. Very well then, elder sister. I clasped my hands in indifferent courtesy. We shall meet at the palace selection. I hear His Majesty's questions are quite numerous. I must return to review. Farewell. I turned and walked toward the carriage. Elena suddenly chased after, voice harsh. You've been preparing all along, haven't you? All that previous gentleness and intimacy were schemes. I turned back to look at her. In her eyes now remained only furious flames, her features twisted with resentment, as if wanting to devour me alive. Correct, I answered. She shrieked, no longer maintaining appearances. I will expose you, let Alexander see your true face. Don't dream of becoming crown princess. That position belongs to me. Only I can make him yearn day and night. You'd best disappear from here. I lifted my skirt and stepped into the carriage, turned back smiling. My sincere apologies, but this place you can no longer return to. Elder and younger sisters. In this world, what hangs on the tip of the tongue has never been sincere. The Marquise and I are also per father and daughter in name. But so what? I am still waiting for the day he completely collapses. Elena's mind had been thrown into chaos by me. Each day she thought only of how to expose me before Alexander, while I daily tended my appearance, cultivated my beauty, refined every gesture and word, learned how to respond to imperial majesty. On the day of palace selection, Marquis Hartley personally escorted me to the palace gates. Upon his person he wore only an old dark blue long robe, his eyes filled with worry, standing watching my figure gradually disappear beyond the palace gates. In the great hall, 4 noble ladies lined up in a row according to family rank. From left to right I stood first. Legitimate daughter of the Hartley Marquis estate, Vivian, 17 years old. I obediently knelt performing courtesy before those who held the highest power in the realm. The Marquis truly knows how to raise a daughter, dignified appearance, and understanding propriety. His Majesty was very satisfied upon first glance. The Empress and Lady Margaret often mention you, praising you as sensible and knowing to conduct yourself properly. I immediately bowed my head in gratitude. This humble lady is foolish. Her Majesty the Empress is the model of virtue for all under heaven, loving the people as her children. Lady Margaret is gentle and benevolent, and pitying this humble lady's childhood frailty requiring country living, showed special concern and care at banquets. His Majesty wanted to probe whether Marquis Hartley had ever made arrangements with the Empress and Lady Margaret. Hearing this, you smiled, observing me carefully from head to toe. Hearing Alexander speak, "You are skilled in music, chess, poetry, and painting. Your literary compositions and poems are all quite excellent," I gently replied. "Father often says he comes from military background, accustomed to distant battlefields, not versed in poetry, books, and ceremonial music. Therefore he devoted effort to teaching this humble lady to read and study, to understand rules and propriety, distinguish right from wrong, advance and retreat appropriately, not living contrary to the proper way of being human." His Majesty had long feared the military power in Marquis Hartley's hands. Now hearing me speak thus, his heart grew even more at ease. "Then if now you were required to give up everything the Marquis' estate possesses, solely to be hoarded with the Crown Prince, would you be willing?" I did not hesitate in the slightest. This humble lady is willing. Apart from Elena, I paid no attention to the two remaining noble ladies. She knelt right beside me. The Emperor looked at her, smiled, saying, "She also bears some resemblance to the legitimate daughter of the Hartley Marquis estate." Elena's expression momentarily stiffened. From before until now, people only said I resembled her, never had anyone said the reverse. After performing courtesy, she spoke in gentle tones. "The Crown Prince once said Miss Vivian's appearance resembles this humble lady's." She was impatient to prove I was imitating her, wanting to seize the position that belonged to her. But she forgot one thing. The person sitting upon the dragon throne was the one who held the mandate of heaven. His Majesty's expression immediately darkened. Never before had anyone dared speak thus before him. The Empress coldly continued, "The resemblance is real, only a pity she does not resemble Vivian in understanding propriety." Alana was as if slashed across by a blade, frozen stiff in the center of the great hall. Her eyes frantically looked toward Alexander seeking help, but he showed no reaction whatsoever. He had witnessed more than enough. She schemed in every way to prove I was the substitute, hoping Alexander would abandon me. The white moonlight in his heart had already shattered. Sometimes I also think, if Elena could have maintained forever that aloof and noble bearing, keeping Alexander forever holding that longing, perhaps she could still have become a secondary consort beside him. But she was afraid I would replace her, afraid power would slip from her grasp, so she increasingly revealed her true nature. The more she imitated me, the more she wanted to draw close to Alexander, the more she exposed her greed, exposed her desires, and the illusion in Alexander's eyes accordingly crumbled bit by bit. Until today, in the midst of palace selection, she dared to overstep the emperor to mention Alexander. Elena was led out of the imperial palace by attendants, while I was personally placed in a soft palanquin by the empress's close attendant and grandly escorted from the palace. Marquis Hartley was extremely satisfied with my performance. The next day His Majesty's personal eunuch came to the estate to announce the decree. I was betrothed as crown princess, and this time Alexander established no secondary consort. I heard Elena had written many letters to Alexander, but all were returned without a single word of reply. Those clans once intimate with Baron Sterling's estate now all flocked to the Marquis estate, but all were declined audience by Marquis Hartley. On the wedding day, naturally all will be invited to the celebration feast. Currently, every movement of the Marquis' estate lay under strict surveillance. The dowry Marquis Hartley prepared for me, compared to common families, was quite generous, but judged by the status of a Marquis was still modest. He was performing the role of humble station, loyalty and frugality to the utmost, and I naturally was willing to perform alongside him to the end. "Father, this time your daughter enters the palace, not knowing when we can meet again. Might you allow your daughter to take a few of father's personal items as remembrance?" This scene of deep father-daughter affection even moved His Majesty to sigh. Having a daughter is still better. For the Crown Prince's grand wedding, Marquis Hartley sent his daughter with a 10-mile red dowry procession, opened charity porridge distribution, the whole nation celebrated. After the guests departed, late night silent, I sat properly upon the sandalwood bed carved with 1,000 flowers, quietly awaiting Alexander's approaching footsteps. He lifted the head covering, carrying the scent of wine, softly saying, "Excellent. Vivian is truly beautiful." One night of clouds and rain. The next morning upon waking I still lay in his embrace, my hand tightly grasping that arm. What is this? Worried I will run away. Alexander pulled his arm to embrace me more tightly, smiling as he asked. I gently whispered. Vivian never dared imagine that in the end, the one to bind her hair with your highness would be me. I only fear this is a dream. Upon waking nothing remains. He lightly brushed aside the hair by my ear, whispering, Vivian, don't be afraid. I want you, not anyone else. Seeing I remained silent, he continued. You are like that white jade bracelet, like mutton fat, the only one in the world. No one can replace you. Then he lowered his head and kissed my forehead gently. 2 months after entering the Eastern Palace, Marquis Hartley sent someone with a message, reminding me I should make my move. Compared to anyone, he was even more obsessed with power, infatuated with gold and silver, all these years playing the role of modest and frugal, solely to win His Majesty's favor. From the very first time meeting me, he had resolved to elevate me to the position of Crown Princess, to become the one at Alexander's side. His Majesty had only one son. If Alexander died, Marquis Hartley would seize the opportunity amid chaos to raise troops in rebellion and claim the throne. I understood clearly that not only the Eastern Palace but throughout the Imperial Palace were his eyes and ears everywhere. Within the military, it went without saying, he had the reputation of loving the people like children, winning the hearts of officers and soldiers, even surpassing the Son of Heaven, only he concealed it very well. The medicine he sent was a slow-acting poison. Mixed into tea, over time it would cause the body to gradually decline without leaving traces. I accepted all the poison, but never once used it. Marquis Hartley still had not completely trusted me. He frequently used the excuse of visiting the Eastern Palace to inquire after Alexander, in truth to spy. Each time he was about to arrive, I would find ways to make Alexander expend his energy all night long. The next day, his weakened spirit and exhausted complexion made the Marquis feel ever more assured. I served as Crown Princess for a full year. That spring season, hand in hand with Alexander, we attended the flower viewing banquet. On my wrist I wore the white jade bracelet like mutton fat, standing amid a garden of 100 flowers competing in splendor. I tilted my head to look at him, my tone like lament. Does your highness still remember when we first met? Alexander's gaze gentle as spring breeze. Naturally, I remember clearly. At that time Vivian wore pale blue robes, like the exquisite scenery of that spring season. I smiled lightly. Does your highness understand my heart toward you? Alexander grasped my hand tightly, smiled in reply. If I didn't understand, I would not have chosen you back then. Returning to the Eastern Palace, I dismissed all the palace attendants, took out a stack of letters and presented them to Alexander, then knelt to perform courtesy. This humble consort is guilty. I advised father many times to no avail. Unable to bear leaving your highness, I can only beseech you to grant me death. Those letters were entirely forged in Marquis Hartley's handwriting. The letters clearly stated that there was already an imperial heir. After the birth of the imperial grandson, he would make his move to assassinate Alexander. This Marquis will personally support the imperial grandson to ascend the throne. Alexander's expression immediately transformed drastically. His voice turned cold as he looked at me. You and Marquis Hartley had been scheming all along. I removed all my hairpins and ornaments, answering in a trembling voice. Since this humble consort entered the Eastern Palace, father has grown increasingly arrogant. I know not who stirred the ambition in his heart. I advised endlessly to no avail. Now I can only report everything to your highness. Alexander fell silent, his expression still cold. Tears streamed down my face in lines. This humble consort is willing to use death to prove her innocence, only praying your highness remains safe and unharmed. Speaking thus, without the slightest hesitation, I turned and struck my head against the corner of the table. Alexander reacted extremely quickly, pulling me back, but my forehead still grazed the wooden edge. I conveniently fainted in his arms. Upon waking, I saw Alexander gaunt and haggard sitting at the bedside looking at me, his eyes bloodshot. Vivian, this is my fault. I should not have suspected you. He gently stroked the wound on my forehead. I struggled to sit up, kneeling upon the bed, tears falling as I spoke. Your highness must not blame yourself. If not for that fated meeting that year, how would this humble consort qualify to stand beside you? I should never have let things reach this point. I endured the pain to perform grand courtesy. This humble consort knows to distinguish right from wrong and great righteousness. As long as the common people dwell in peace, His Majesty, Her Majesty, and your highness remains safe, then whatever this humble consort will willingly do. Alexander lifted me up, his gaze unfathomably deep. If you truly consider me your husband, then no need to hide anymore. Marquis Hartley is not your birth father, is he? My heart trembled slightly, but outwardly I maintained a bewildered expression. Why does your highness say this? Alexander sighed softly. I already had someone investigate. The Marchioness once bore a daughter while accompanying him to the frontier battlefields, but frontier conditions were harsh. The child died before reaching 1 year old. Several years later, Marquis Hartley brought you back to the capital. Everyone believed you were the frail legitimate daughter sent away for recuperation. I involuntarily fell silent, then smiled bitterly. Your highness knew this all along, why then? Alexander looked at me, his voice soft yet sincere. I never cared about your origins, only who you are. There was a time I was infatuated with Alina, but from the moment you entered, every word spoken, every gesture made, every furrowed brow, every smile, all made me unable to look away. He paused briefly then continued. I originally intended to keep Alina as secondary consort. But when I saw you wearing those jade earrings, I understood there was grievance in your heart, so I decided not to keep anyone at all. This was the first time since our marriage that Alexander spoke clearly of these matters. After the audience selection, I had someone thoroughly investigate your background. Alexander embraced me, speaking softly. Father Emperor also knows. That's why during the palace selection he asked whether you would be willing to give up everything the Marquis' estate provided to follow me. I was momentarily stunned, softly asking, does your highness not consider me ungrateful? After all, Marquis Hartley raised me for 10 years. Alexander sighed softly. You are still too naive. He raised you not from kindness. From the beginning he calculated you could at least become secondary consort, only then willing to cultivate you. If he truly rebelled, you would have absolutely no path to survival. I contemplated briefly before speaking. Then what does your highness plan to do? In my heart I had long arranged all calculations, but could not reveal a single word. I wanted Alexander to believe that from beginning to end this was solely Marquis Hartley's conspiracy, while I was merely a chess piece being manipulated. This way the compassion in Alexander's heart would deepen, his reasoning more easily separating me from Marquis Hartley. He said, the evidence is not yet sufficient. More time is needed. If it's not yet sufficient, then I shall deliver the evidence into your very hands. The next day, Alexander's trusted attendant intercepted a letter, correspondence from Elena to Marquis Hartley. The letter wrote, I only fear younger sister lives in ease and pleasure, has long forgotten the Marquis' household still exists. If I can contribute strength alongside the Marquis' household, I hope your excellency will not forget the promised position. The handwriting in the letter was my imitation of her script. I had studied her for 10 years, her calligraphy was the easiest to imitate. The frontier sent urgent news. Marquis Hartley was dispatched to lead troops in campaign. Shortly after leaving the capital, Alexander immediately issued orders. All family members of officers and soldiers in Marquis Hartley's army must enter the palace. All items carried on their persons were confiscated. When Marquis Hartley's forces advanced into the valley, they were immediately surrounded by Imperial forest guards lying in ambush. In the hands of the Imperial guards were belongings of their relatives. No matter how loyal the officers and soldiers, they could not bear to sacrifice their families. Weapons were lowered, all submitted. Marquis Hartley was escorted back to the palace in silence, while the Grand Army was taken over and commanded by Alexander's trusted subordinates. As for me, in the name of Crown Princess I had someone send invitations to the Sterling household to enter the palace to meet and reminisce about old times. Alina arrived in gorgeous robes, casting flirtatious glances toward Alexander, but in mere moments was forcibly led away. Several days later, news of Marquis Hartley dying in battle at the frontier was transmitted back to the capital. Baron Sterling, Alina's father, upon hearing news of his old friend's death in battle, became so agitated he fell ill and passed away. Crown Prince Alexander remained Crown Prince, his decisive action struck like thunder descending, allowing no one time to react. I understood clearly, I alone could not overthrow Marquis Hartley, therefore I borrowed another's blade to kill. In his eyes, the sole purpose was for me to become the woman beside Alexander. Whether primary or secondary consort made no difference to him. But from the very first moment laying eyes on Alexander, I knew I must become primary consort. I wanted in his heart to be only me alone. Therefore step by step I shattered Alina's image in his heart, then quietly replaced it. I was never a gentle person. Perhaps there was once such a time, but from age 7 when I stepped into the Hartley Marquis estate, I understood clearly I could no longer continue being kind-hearted. Because I knew kind-hearted people do not necessarily have good endings. Soft-hearted pupils cannot accomplish great matters, much less avenge blood debts. His Majesty, to commemorate a meritorious official who died for the nation, bestowed upon me no small rewards. I wore court robes standing in the dark and cold heavenly prison, looking at Marquis Hartley, his hair disheveled, his appearance haggard, no longer possessing half the imposing bearing of former days. Never imagined I would be defeated by a lowly wretch like you. Marquis Hartley ground his teeth. I opened the food box, smiling. Father, eat before it grows cold. This is a dish your daughter made with her own hands. Father, eat your fill before departing. The journey won't be on an empty stomach. He snorted, spitting a mouthful of saliva toward me. Vicious little demon. These 10 years I raised you, was it all in vain? I smiled, my gaze calm. How would your daughter dare forget? It was precisely father, renowned throughout the 4 directions, commanding great armies, honored for a time, who swallowed relief funds, delayed military strength, causing my entire clan to die of starvation, die of illness, bodies buried beneath landslides. My voice suddenly dropped low, soft yet each word carved into bone and marrow. My parents, in order for me to live, gave me their last portion of food. My older brother, his limbs already frozen stiff, still struggled to lift me above the mud and rubble. How would your daughter dare forget these things? Marquis Hartley's expression drastically changed. When did you know? I smiled faintly. I knew from the day father chose me to replace Elena, wanting me to become the woman beside Alexander. Also from that day, your daughter understood the opportunity had arrived. Speaking thus, I turned to look toward the opposite prison cell where 3 members of the Sterling family were imprisoned. I spoke gently, my lips still bearing a smile. Baron Sterling, I wonder whether in the future you wish to choose a burial plot in scenic surroundings or vast open fields. Baron Sterling's expression exactly mirrored Marquis Hartley's, filled with terror. What do you intend to do? I tilted my head slightly. Does the Baron not remember? 10 years ago you selected ancestral burial grounds, disregarding official warnings, brazenly constructing a tomb in mountainous regions at risk of landslides. During heavy rains, the entire mountain collapsed, burying over 10 villages alive. Fearing implication, the Baron pressured officials to conceal it, then pushed all relief funds to Marquis Hartley to handle. 10 villages met disaster, yet the memorial to the imperial court reported only 1 remained. Not only that, you embellished claiming you had rescued all the disaster victims. I smiled faintly, my eyes flashing with cold light. In dreams at night, have you gentlemen ever seen those villages submerged in landslides? Have you ever remembered those living in circumstances worse than death? 10 years in the Hartley Marquis estate, I studied day and night, never daring to tire, because each time I closed my eyes I saw my parents and older brother. When I learned Marquis Hartley wanted to exploit my face resembling Elena to send me into the Eastern Palace, I immediately understood the opportunity for vengeance had arrived. I made Alexander love me, trust me, then used his authority to repay the blood debt, burying my entire clan. I once thought, upon achieving success I would depart, but then I could not bear it, because amid those hundreds and thousands of schemes, I had truly developed feelings for him. Congratulations to His Majesty, congratulations to the Crown Prince. The Crown Princess has given birth to a young imperial grandson. The imperial physician knelt upon the ground, excitedly reporting. Alexander's face opened into radiant smile. Good, very good. He bent down embracing me, lightly kissing my forehead. Vivian, you name the child. I smiled faintly, my hand trembling as I stroked the infant's hair. Let's call her Serenity, hoping in this life she may sail smoothly with favorable winds, needing no scheming, not having to endure days like her mother once suffered. Alexander gently repeated. Serenity, excellent. Truly an excellent name. Extra chapter from Alexander's perspective. Miss Sterling has ignored me for many days now. Sometimes I too grow angry, but thinking further, by what right must she absolutely adore me? Simply because I am Crown Prince. When my mood was troubled, raising my head I encountered a lady wearing pale blue robes, gentle as willows before wind. She resembled Miss Sterling greatly, but compared to her, this young lady possessed additional warmth and approachability. She called me young master. When she smiled, it was extraordinarily beautiful. I could not restrain myself from pouring out all my melancholy to her, attentively serving her food. But I forgot my own status. Because of that moment of warmth, she was dragged out to become gossip on everyone's lips. Knowing I had erred, I had someone gift her a pair of earrings. That day meeting her, the magnolias were in full bloom, pure enough to move hearts. Unexpectedly, Elena publicly reproached her, saying, "Those earrings were originally made for her." I wanted to explain, wanted to say something. But she instead rode her horse proudly, turned her head smiling. "I am unlike other noble young ladies, not so delicate as all that." She drew her bow, one arrow struck the deer, she swung her whip urging the horse forward. Graceful yet spirited, I watched her retreating figure grow distant, for the first time feeling so this world still contained ladies so vivacious, so radiant. My aunt had met her several times, continuously praising her dignified understanding of propriety, genuine and unpretentious. Even Mother Empress after meeting her often spoke of her pure and untainted nature. At the autumn banquet at my aunt's estate, I originally intended to attend to appreciate her poetic talent. Unexpectedly, she sat quietly in the corner of the banquet, not wearing the earrings I had gifted at all. I puzzled over this for a very long time. Could it be because I praised Elena's painting? I admit I once liked Elena, infatuated since youth. She possessed stunning beauty, was talented and elegant in bearing, but she always remained cold and distant toward me, causing these feelings to erode with passing years. I never gave up, because compared to anyone, at least I was willing to make her crown princess. That autumn, I received a painting. Instinct told me it was from her. Indeed, it bore the brushwork of Vivian. In Marquise Hartley's study hung paintings of hers everywhere. I stood gazing, imagining her alone in the countryside recuperating, my heart suddenly welling with compassion. Vivian truly was understanding. Even yielding victory in the poetry competition to Elena made me angry. She need not suffer such losses at all, but merely because Elena held the name of the person in the crown prince's heart, she voluntarily yielded. I had someone deliver to her the jade bracelet left by the imperial grandfather. Wanting to tell her she need not yield all these things, she deserved to possess them. Strangely, Elena then proactively invited me, speaking sweetly, her manner gentle. This was precisely the scene I had once desperately longed for. Yet I only felt familiar. Her smile, her gaze, her manner at that time resembled Vivian exactly. Elena even advised me not to make things difficult for Vivian. I struggled to suppress my anger. I had indulged her excessively, so she forgot who truly could decide these matters. Even Father Emperor and Mother Empress never interfered with my intentions. By what right would a baron's young daughter dare decide in my stead? Returning to the palace, Vivian had someone return the jade bracelet. I went to see her, saw her kneeling upon the ground, her expression sorrowful and distressed. She spoke softly. If the crown prince and elder sister share deep affection and righteous bond, then whether the world's only jade bracelet or the world's only gentleman, Vivian is willing to obey elder sister's words and return everything. That moment, I finally understood she held me in her heart. That winter, Vivian invited me ice skating on the lake. The instant I saw her fall through the ice, my heart also fell with her. I knew she deliberately invited me there. In my heart was some anger, but I also understood she only wanted me to see clearly Elena's true nature. Looking at that small face pale as death, without a trace of color, I was pained to the extreme, all anger dissipating with the cold wind. After the new year, my aunt entered the palace, endlessly praising her. She said, "Throughout the capital spreads word that she knows household management. While Miss Sterling has been learning from her step by step." I understood Elena wanted to become crown princess. She feared Vivian would seize the position in my heart, therefore anxiously imitated her bit by bit. But was this still the Elena I once admired? Still the maiden aloof and detached, untouched by worldly dust, not coveting fame or profit from years ago? Unexpectedly, at the very audience selection, she wore that pale blue gown. I was utterly disappointed. If she had maintained her true heart, perhaps I would still respect her somewhat. Laughably, when Elena wanted to replace Vivian, Vivian herself proactively wore the jade stone earrings, the things originally belonging to Elena, quietly telling me, "See, I am precisely the shadow in your heart. I knew in her heart lay grievance, and that grievance caused me infinite heartache. Marquis Hartley never concealed his ambitions, and I also never hid that I had long seen through those intentions. I once asked her, if I did not view her as anyone else's shadow, would she be willing to remain? She answered, I dare not harbor such distant dreams. Being thus, I then dismissed all others, keeping only her alone, so she would no longer be anyone's shadow. Mother Empress once asked me, don't you see she advanced too quickly, too smoothly in approaching you? Therefore I sent people to investigate. Finally we found an old physician at the frontier, precisely the one who years ago treated the legitimate daughter of the Hartley Marquis estate. So that was it. She is not the Marchioness's birth daughter. Just keep her, Father Emperor said, to see what schemes they ultimately have. Father Emperor and Mother Empress originally cherished Vivian, but regarding her background still held some doubts. Releasing the tiger to the mountains is inferior to raising the tiger nearby for easier vigilance. After 1 year of marriage, Vivian still had not conceived, because each day she drank calming soup, in reality contraceptive medicine. Before investigating the root clearly, how could we allow her to bear an imperial grandson? But I did not expect Vivian would proactively reveal everything. I was angry. Angry she was manipulated by others as a chess piece. I was even more vexed she never regarded me as husband to trust. Together with Father Emperor I laid the trap, bringing Marquis Hartley back to the capital imprisoned in the heavenly prison. Yet I still wanted to preserve for her a status, a dignity. Therefore publicly announced to all under heaven that Marquis Hartley died in battle at the frontier. After all, until now she had never done anything harmful to me, to Father Emperor and Mother Empress. I personally heard her in the heavenly prison interrogate Marquis Hartley and the Sterling family. She laughed, laughter ringing out, words spoken gently, but I heard her heart bleeding. So she had once suffered thus. How difficult for her, a single lady harboring 10 years of vengeance, scheming alone, solely to reclaim justice for her clan. Together with Father Emperor and Mother Empress I deliberated. No matter what, in the future we must establish her as Empress. Only she truly comprehends the people's hearts, can feel the suffering of the common people. When our child was born, Vivian named her Serenity. I understood, she hoped the child would have peace and smooth sailing. Having suffered hardship for over 10 years, she placed all beautiful hopes upon a little one. Very well, then let's call her Serenity. I silently resolved, not only the child but also her entire life henceforth I would protect completely, allowing her a whole lifetime of fulfillment. The story ends here for now. If it touched your heart or left you thinking, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please like, subscribe,